Our next speaker is a young friend of mine. We got this youth movement going on in the league, and I'm very pleased to see that. Ed and I get together from time to time and reminisce about how old we're getting, all the things we've done. And I can see most people around here that are joining us in the aging thing, but it's so gratifying to me to see all these young folks. And Brad is one of them. He's one of our young leaders that are up and coming. He is the founder and the, I guess you could call editor, blog master of one of my favorite blogs, Knoxville Descent. And his wife Renee's with him, and they're about to have their first child in June. They're living down in Eufaula. Brad is, they're members of the Alabama League. And Brad has written some really wonderful stuff for the league, and in particular something recent about the logic behind our street demonstrations. And I think that's what he's going to talk on today. And he has a very, very important message that will follow very well on what we've heard so far today from our other speakers. And I'll introduce him right now, Brad Griffin. Come forward, please, and speak.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to top Charles' singing or Michael's recent speech about our triumphs over the Radical Sparkle Collective. There's nothing really I can add that's as exciting as that. But, my job here today is to explain the reasoning behind all these street demonstrations and stuff we're doing, because we've had a lot of questions about that. You know, what's the point of it? So anyway, here we go. I'm speaking here today because I want to go on the record and provide a definitive answer to two sets of questions. The first question is, what's the purpose of this organization, the League of the South? Why should you join it, and what's in it for you? The second question is, what is the point of all these street demonstrations the League has been having, and why should anyone take the time out of their schedule to participate in them? Let's briefly address the first question. What's the purpose of this organization? The purpose of this organization, the long-range goal of the Southern Nationalist Movement, is to create an independent Southern nation-state. The League is the home for people who are already converted to the Southern Nationalist cause, who are not content just to be passive consumers of information, but who have made the decision to pool their resources with others and become active participants in our struggle. This is a key distinction. A passive consumer of information doesn't have to join the League and to reap the benefits that he or she is seeking. Such a person can just read our websites, subscribe to the Free Magnolia, watch our videos, and follow us on Twitter. But an active participant in our struggle is someone who wants to do more than just entertain abstract ideas while sitting behind a computer screen. The major incentive to join the League is to connect with people like them in the real world, in their area, so they can start to act on their beliefs to advance our cause. This brings us to our second question. What's the point of all these street demonstrations, and why should anyone participate in them? In his book, Rules for Radicals, the community organizer Saul Alinsky defined a tactic as, quote, in his words, doing what you can with what you have. He says that power has always been derived from two main sources, money and people. The League doesn't have much money, but it does have a small and growing vanguard of dedicated activists. As a tactic, street demonstrations are something that our activists can do. A good tactic which meets Alinsky's condition of being fun, something that people enjoy, because let's face it, every time we go to Tallahassee or Murfreesboro or Uvalde, we always have a good time. It's fun. It sustains itself. And a tactic that satisfies the what's in it for me factor of converts whose attraction to the League lies in the sense of empowerment in connecting with people who share their views. Now here are 10 things that we are accomplishing with our street demonstrations. This is been mentioned by Ed and Michael before. Here's the first thing. We're violating the taboos. As things stand today, it is taboo in America for a white Southerner to be explicitly pro-white, pro-South, pro-Christian, and to support Southern independence from Washington. To unabashedly advance this position in the public sphere and to advocate on behalf of our own interests as an ethnic minority. By taking to the streets on a regular basis, we are demonstrating that we are no longer going to observe these taboos or acknowledge the legitimacy in the South. We believe that our cause is moral and just, that our demographic displacement is an immoral assault on the birthright of future generations, and we invite our fellow Southerners to publicly violate the reigning taboos and to join our movement. Just as in the days of Jim Crow, to draw a basic analogy, the reigning taboos will only crumble under pressure when a sufficient number of white Southerners are willing to publicly rise up and stand together against them. We are taking the initiative, working toward a new normal where violating the reigning taboos has become commonplace, and making it easier in the process for those who are less bold than ourselves to step forward. We've done this 5 times now in Uvalde and Vidalia, Georgia, Murfreesboro and Shelbyville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, that's the Tom Watson protest that I organized, Greer and Travelers Rest, South Carolina, and most recently in Tallahassee, Florida. We can point to these street demonstrations we've done as proof that the taboos can be challenged at relatively little cost. After all, we've done this like 5 times and no one's been struck down by lightning and all these bad things that are supposed to happen, like being confronted by the radical sparkle movement and, I don't know, people decide that's just too much, they can't come out and publicly do anything. But these demonstrations are proof that the taboos can be challenged at little cost. There's no reason why our movement has to be contained to the internet when we can operate with impunity here in the real world. And we've demonstrated that. We've gone all across hundreds of miles from Florida to Tennessee, Alabama to South Carolina, and next week all the way to Virginia. The power of our enemies, like the Southern Public Law Center, has been widely exaggerated. And routine street demonstrations are a means to puncture this misconception. In Tallahassee, a black reporter asked Dr. Hill what he thinks about the League of the South being labeled a bunch of racists. His response illustrates our attitude. So what? I'm standing up for my people, white Southern people, and no one else. So what? We're standing up for our people. It is the right thing to do. It is what we ought to do. We should have started doing it a long time ago. The fear of sticking our necks out has long been one of our worst enemies. And that, more than anything else, has to be overcome before we can start to generate the numbers to move forward. Number 2, raising our profile. There are millions of white Southerners out there who are already thinking along the same lines that we are. We know from the polls that millions of white Southerners are upset like we are about issues like immigration, multiculturalism, gay marriage, abortion, cultural degeneracy, spiraling national debt, black crime, affirmative action, gun control, endless foreign wars and entanglements, the seemingly endless road to the federal government, the unsustainable welfare state, and so on. Just all these issues, they're just multiplied. We know that millions of white Southerners have little confidence in the political class, the Democrats and Republicans, and national institutions in Washington. There are already millions of white Southerners who are openly supportive of secession. We saw that in the secession petitions. Millions of people, 40%, there was a poll out that said 40% of Georgia Republicans are already think that secession is a great idea. It's just we're not reaching them. There are millions of people who believe that America is beyond reform and cannot be salvaged. Plus millions more who are on the verge of throwing in the towel on reform and need only a small push to throw support behind the cause of Southern independence. Street demonstrations are a way to push ourselves to the forefront of this larger cultural angst, identify ourselves with it, and agitate it. So when our people go looking for trouble, We want to have already established our reputation as the South's most notorious group of troublemaking secessionists. We want people to know we're out there. So when they decide, I've had enough, this is where they're going to go. The GOP ain't going to get it done, and this is the last alternative. And everybody reaches their moment, their breaking point. And that's one of the things we're trying to accomplish with our demonstrations. And number 3, defining our image. The League sees itself as an advocacy group for the survival, well-being, and independence of the Southern people. For about 15 years, though, the League was known mostly for avoiding racial controversy and telling the truth about history, as Michael says, than political activism. The outside perception of the League was as a neo-Confederate group, just a bunch of Johnny rebels who were stuck in the past and who were primarily concerned about Confederacy, not something that's relevant to everybody's everyday life. I mean, if you're just driven by nostalgia, that's everybody else is not driven by nostalgia. They're just driven by what's happening in their communities today, not like 100 years ago. Oh, okay. And we were, rather than a vibrant Southern nationalist activist organization, which is oriented towards the present and future of our people and motivated by contemporary threats to our existence, still hasn't fully caught up with recent changes. Street demonstrations are a way to define our identity and recast our image as a social movement. When the SPLC publishes scurrilous articles that insinuate we are a violent organization composed of retrograde neo-Nazis and Klansmen, we can respond by rolling hours of tape on YouTube of dozens of peaceful demonstrations about immigration, gay marriage, Southern heritage, and other social issues attended by polite, friendly, well-dressed, ordinary white Southerners who share the concerns of our neighbors on these issues. I mean, come on, all you have to do is watch our videos to see kids running around at our rallies. It's hard to demonize that little girl smiling into the camera, holding up a sign that says it's wrong to replace us. These street demonstrations are the public face of the League of the South. The way in which we present ourselves to the public eye undermines media stereotypes and caricatures. The videos and images from our rallies attract new people to our cause. The silent sympathizer can see what we are doing and conclude that we are the kind of organization that he or she would feel comfortable in joining. Number 4, building social capital. The anonymous relationships which are formed on the internet on the basis of just abstract ideas are notoriously fragile. By holding these street demonstrations, we're giving our people something constructive to do in the real world, an outlet for their energies which builds relationships, trust, solidarity within our organization, which makes it stronger over time as we all get to know each other on a personal basis. Among other things, and this is just one of the many benefits, it makes it a lot harder for trolls and the opposition to use the internet to disrupt our group of rumors and innuendo. Number 5, real-world social networks. It's not enough to educate our people with abstract ideas on the internet. Street demonstrations are a useful entry point for converts into our budding real-world social network. So we have a social network here in Central Alabama. We have one in Florida. We have in South Carolina, in Tennessee. In order for an individual to take the next step in the conversion process beyond just embracing abstract ideas, real-world social networks are needed to validate and affirm the new belief system of the convert. Quite often, the convert is exchanging one value system in the social network for a more agreeable and intellectually consistent one. Thus, real-world social networks provide a critical milieu for exploring taboo ideas with the support and fellowship of like-minded people, which enables converts to overcome the deterrent of social stigma in their area. Number 6 is another advantage: self-regulation. The anonymity of the internet is a paradise for trolls and other disruptive individuals who would harm our organization. By taking our movement into the streets, we are erecting a massive barrier to malcontents who flourish on the internet, but stick out like sore thumbs in a high-trust environment where our activists can be measured by their deeds rather than just rhetorical commitment to our cause. I mean, I know plenty of these guys who are here today, and I know their dedication extends beyond just, oh, I'm one of you. We've been there. We've been all over the South. I can trust people like that. Number 7, gaining publicity. As our street demonstrations grow in number and frequency, our movement will garner more publicity from the mass media. As things stand today, the mainstream media prefers to ignore us when possible, or defame us when we can't be ignored, in order to keep us marginalized and unknown to our target audience. Generally speaking, it is better to be defamed than ignored, and the publicity the League has been receiving has been trending upwards over the last year as a direct result of our street demonstrations. And not all of that has been negative. Some of it's actually been pretty good, especially that last article. It got like 40,000, 45,000 people saw it. It's reasonable to assume that as the League becomes more associated in the public mind with opposition to changing demographics in the South, particularly in the minds of mainstream journalists who see us doing these rallies over and over again, that we will be sought out more often by the media whenever stories are written about the issue. Just last month, for example, I was sought out by HBO to participate in a documentary on the failure of Alabama's immigration law, HB 56. That was filmed in Montgomery just last month. The League is also starting to put up succeed billboards in heavily trafficked areas in conjunction with our street demonstrations. The first billboard is already up in Tallahassee, Florida, and 2 more billboards will soon be unveiled in Alabama and Georgia. These billboards directly expose thousands of commuters to our core message and force the mainstream media to acknowledge our movement, which they would otherwise just ignore. There's also a social media trail on YouTube of our street demonstrations and conferences, which discredits slanders, mischaracterizations of our movement as a bunch of buffoons and cartoon characters, which can be accessed, and this can be accessed by anyone in their pajamas in the comfort of their own home who want to learn more about our organization. They can just look us up on YouTube and see what we're about, all the stuff we've done. They can see who the real buffoons were in Murfreesboro and Shelbyville, all those clowns we saw up there. Number 8, making a sacrifice. Human beings are born with an overwhelming desire to believe in something. And white Southerners have traditionally believed in Americanism, this promise of liberty and equality and abstractions, that kind of stuff. Southern nationalism can become the focal point of such a desire by offering these people a cause, a new creed to follow that appeals to white Southerners who have lost their faith in Americanism. Street demonstrations are rituals to perform, a small sacrifice that a convert can make to advance Southern nationalism, which allows them to demonstrate both fidelity to our cause and to come away feeling more committed to our people than before. These events are a practical outlet for giving structure to our movement. Number 9, gaining experience. Every time the League holds a street demonstration, we gain more practical experience with hosting these events. We can see what works and what doesn't. We can try out new ideas like putting up billboards. We can see who is reliable, who can be counted on in their area to stand with us when we ask them to. We can also become much better prepared to spring into action whenever a favorable opportunity to make a big splash arises, like the Trayvon Martin thing happened in Florida. If we had an organization down there, we could have jumped in the middle of that and got a lot of publicity, but we just weren't ready because we didn't have the practice to do it. And number 10 is sparking imitators. Just as a breeze can blow across a fire and ignite other areas, the street demonstrations that we have been doing in Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Florida can spark activism in other parts of the South. That's already true in our own case because we have been inspired by the European nationalist groups like Blaine's Blaine overseas. I know they've been a big influence on it. We followed the reaction to controversial billboards that were put up in Arkansas and Missouri, and we saw what happened there, and we decided to put up our own provocative billboard in Tallahassee, Florida, and that got a lot of coverage. We followed the media firestorm that was ignited when the Virginia flaggers raised the Confederate battle flag on the lot just south of Richmond. They got a lot of attention for just putting up a flag. Something we can do. If a tactic is perceived to work, it will spread. there's a possibility that Americans in other parts of the United States might be inspired by our example of what we're doing. Launch their own street demonstrations and start getting better organized. They might even decide to shift their focus away from the poisonous environment of the internet, which brings out the worst in our people, and back towards the real world, which tends to bring out the best in them. Whenever we gather in the real world for a demonstration, I've noticed it always tends to lift our people's spirits. I've seen lots of people feed off the positive energy of other people and come away from our events with a new outlook. It's exactly the opposite on the internet, where long-term exposure to all the negative energy in cyberspace tends to make people more cynical, alienated, and defeatist over time. In particular, I think this unhealthy negative environment is unattractive to women. And that goes a long way towards explaining why there's so few women in anonymous movements based on the internet. It's just a nasty environment. In conclusion, the logic of street demonstrations isn't a roadmap to our long-range goal of secession and creating a southern nation-state. It's a practical guide to how we can become marginally more powerful than we are now. There's no reason why we can't attract more people to our cause. Get better organized, cultivate new leaders, raise more money, and become more influential over time. These 5 things, numbers, organization, leadership, money, and influence, are the components of political power. And as we accumulate more power, we will be in a better position to offset the power of other groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, whose agenda is hostile to our own. They got $200 million in the bank. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that? If we come back here a year from now, and our street demonstrations have made us stronger than we are here today, then we will know that we're on the right track. Thank you.